Is it live? Is it on? What is happening, everybody? All right, so happy whatever day it is. I don't even know anymore. It's like Groundhog Day. And if it weren't for reports that I had to turn in for work, I wouldn't honestly even care what day it is. But I don't know. Happy COVID-19 to all of you guys. Hope everything's going well for you guys, staying healthy, wearing your mask, wearing your gloves, doing all that kind of good stuff, not touching your face all the time, which is hard as hell to do, especially during this time of year. I don't know about you guys, but I am suffering through some allergies and a chair that's not working. It's funny how everything just started acting up. All right, out of nowhere. Trying this again. What's happening, everybody? Anyway, no, I'm working on a new rig right now, too. So if this thing just falls, bounces off the ground, earthquake. Posner, what's up, man? So anyway, wanted to get your guys' takes on that new Corvette that's out. You know, you're getting a lot of, you're seeing a lot of that out and about right now, at least on the internet. And you would think that, I mean, my God, you would think it's the only car that they had come out with in the last, I don't know, 20 years. It's driving me crazy because what I keep seeing is nothing but the C8, and it's almost like everybody had forgotten about the C7. And that's really kind of weird to me. John G's checking in saying, good evening from Buffalo, New York. I like it. Got the arms up. I like it. Let's see. Anyway, getting back to it, though. Any of you guys own a C7, and what's y'all's take on the C8? I'd like to get a Corvette owner's perspective of that car. Because, man, I'm not going to say I'm not impressed with the car. The car runs really good, but just not for the money. I'm a little bit confused by the amount of money that thing costs. And you can talk about the $60,000 or $65,000 poverty pack all you want, but it's kind of crazy when we're talking about $70,000 car once, all the paperwork's, all the I's have been dotted and T's have been crossed. Calling that one poverty pack is kind of crazy. So anyway, love to hear, like I say, from a Corvette owner's perspective on that. Let's see. Ryan is saying, hey, I've got a 5.7 Charger from '06. What mod should I do? It's stock. Honestly, man, I mean, you're looking at, if it's a 262 equipped car, talking about the rear end, so we're going to go from the back to the front here. If it's a 262 equipped car, 309 with limited slip would be the first place I would look. Obviously, a tune is going to come with the territory on that, so an engine tune, trans tune. At this point, it depends on what your budget is. The gear is going to be kind of expensive. You're going to be looking at a tune either way, but what mods do you want to do to it? What does your budget allow? Is there an alternative to this? In other words, you've got this, what did you say it was, an '06? You're saying you got an '06 Charger. Could you save up for a little bit longer and maybe get into something that's a little bit later, making a little bit more power? That's some things that I would be taking a look at first. But if you're dead set on keeping the car and you're going to mod that thing, got to start with a budget. If it's not going to be a rear end, obviously start with a tune and go from there. I just wouldn't advise doing a lot with that car because valve seat issues can start to bite you in the ass a little bit. So just be on notice for that. You start throwing a lot of power at it, power adders, nitrous, things like that. That's going to be a problem for valve seats potentially. At that point, I would say get the heads off of there, get them to a head shop and have those valve seats, basically new valve seats installed. Word to the wise. Christian's saying that vet is sick, but I'm set on either a Hellcat or a Z06 after school. Put a stick in that C8 and you'll have my attention. That's exactly what a lot of folks are saying right now. As a matter of fact, it's what an absurd amount of people are talking about with that car. And everybody that's driven the car that I know of that's actually got seat time with that car, they love it. The downside to that car is that it's alienating some enthusiasts. And I'm afraid to say that it's alienating the buying demographic that the Corvette typically shoots for, which is, somewhere, it's an older demographic. Let's just put it that way. Lots of 40, 50, 60-year-olds driving Corvettes with manual transmissions. Hang on just a second. I got to plug this thing. It looks like it's about to die. Of course it's about to die. Hang on. Doesn't it figure? Thing's just about to keel over on me. Anyway, the issue that I've got with the Vet, though, again, no real manual transmission. I know that's kind of the wave of things coming. I get it. I understand it. I'm on board with some of it, but not with all of it, especially when, again, you start to look at the cost of those transmissions and you start to realize just how expensive those things can be. And if something fails, look, I get it. Modern cars aren't cheap to work on. They're not easy to work on, whatever. But the problem is, guys, look, we're talking about 20 grand if you frag a transmission. That's a lot of money. Does anybody even know what it costs to replace a clutch pack in one of those cars? I don't have a clue. But I'm pretty sure it's not cheap. And second to that, I'm pretty sure you're going to be doing it relatively often. I mean, at least that's been the case with those types of transmissions leading up to this. So I don't know. I'm not hollering sour grapes because I'm not really looking at one, but again, just looking for some input because, look, part of me really wants to like that car, but I guess let me rephrase that. The Vet guy in me really wants to like that car. I've owned 2 Corvettes. But the Viper owner in me wants to know what can Dodge do to best that new Vet with a more familiar platform. So I'm hoping that there's some notes being taken over at FCA when it comes to that stuff. Let's see. Arnold's checking in saying, what's up, B? What's up, Arnold? Chris is saying, not holding my breath, though. Oh, talking about the Vet. Yeah, with the manual, I doubt it. Let's see. Blacktop checking in, saying, checking in from Charleston, South Carolina. I like it. Rip33 saying, what up, B? What up, Rip? Got the arms up. I like it. White Knuckle RT saying, what's up, B? Got the fist pump. What's up, man? Blackbird. Corvette C8 is cool as beans. Can't wait to see the Z6. Okay, the Z06. That is the car to look out for, no doubt about it. And I'm curious as to what they do to the transmission to get it to handle more power, if they have to do anything or if they do anything to handle more power. Mainly because, so here's the thing, throwing a bunch of power at that type of a transmission is that's how you tear up clutches, right? Well, the problem is, how many of these cars are really going to be run on closed circuits? How many? Not hardly any, right? At least not for a while. Not in any real numbers. I mean, look, the C6 and the C5 are pretty much dominating that field. But realistically, how many of these cars are really ever going to be taken to a drag strip for that matter? Very few of them. So I'm thinking that there's not going to be a whole lot of issues with transmissions breaking just in general. But what I am curious about is if they do fail, what is going to be the failure rate? Are you going to start hearing about failures with that car? You know, because there's always that very vocal minority. You know, if something happens to their car or truck, whatever it is, the sky is falling, right? So I guess the question that I have at that point is, are people going to blame it on the car? Are they going to say that the car just can't handle modifications? Are they going to say if you do anything to a Vet, it'll blow up? How many passes is the average before something lets go? That's kind of what I'm getting at, because the more videos that I see of the Vet, because we're starting to get saturated with them at this point. Everybody's got the fast-est, the quick-est, the whatever-est. It's the flavor of the month, right? When does that car get a chance to start running nines? When is it? You know, that's the only thing I want to hear about. They got to start getting them in the nines quick, though. Just haven't unlocked that that operating system yet. But it shouldn't take them too much longer. Ryan's checking in saying, hey, thanks for the input. Thank you. Midwest Mopar saying, how's it going? What would you think of a long tube header and J Green tune on a scat pack? Works pretty good. The thing is, though, is don't get ahead of yourself with long tube headers, at least when it comes to horsepower. And for that matter, don't worry about power increases with these Hemis. I don't know what it is, but these things lie on dynos. Interesting. So my car, my 392, really didn't pick up anything on the dyno from tuning. I mean, it picked up maybe 15 horsepower, something like that. But with a tune and a transmission tune that came later, that car would have easily gone 11 O's, and it was running 1130s in full weight trim on 20s. Find me a stock car that'll do that. The stock cars that I've run in the same weight conditions, actually it was a Scat Pack core, and I drove that to an 1194. So, I mean, we're talking factory stock except for 275, 45 Nitto drag radials on stock wheels. So I got to tell you, the tune, yeah, the long tubes. Oh, and yeah, I did that without long tubes, by the way. The long tubes are going to give you more partial throttle. It's going to give you more power down low, but you're not going to pick up any real horsepower with a set of long tubes. And the reason for that is, well, there's two reasons. One is the camshaft profile. It's got a very wide lobe separation angle, and there's just not enough time to get any scavenging in that cylinder. The second thing is just the packaging of those types of headers. To get from this part of the car here to down there is a long way in one of these big Mopars. Primary size is just kind of big. So, or you need to have a bigger primary size just to, get proper scavenging and proper flow out of it at higher RPM. So just keep that in the back of your mind. A set of 1 7/8 inch long tubes are great. Cooks makes a great set of headers. They fit really well. Jay can put together a tune for you, and you'll be off to the races. Let's see. Riv's saying, I like the look of the C5 and 7 better. I'll agree with that. I'm just not on board with the new Vet yet. I thought I would be. I thought I was going to get all lathered up over it, and I can't. I think I'm waiting for the Grain Sport and the Z06. I think that's really where I'm at with that car. Let's see. Arnold's asking, thoughts on a 390 gear on an 8-speed FBO Cam 392? Bad idea, bro. At least not my cup of tea. 370 is about as rough as I would go with that, primarily because first gear is going to be practically useless at that point. I've driven NAG 1 cars, 426 car, NAG 1 though, with a 390 gear. I mean, it didn't run bad. It wasn't overly done, but again, we're talking about a NAG 1 car. You get that 4.17 ratio with a 8-speed automatic, and it's going to be pretty brutal to drive that thing around. I mean, first gear is going to be completely useless, and you're going to be kicking along at about, 2,800 RPM and on the freeway at around 80 miles an hour. So I don't know. I would say buyer beware on that. I mean, unless you're running a 30-inch tire or something like that. Because you got to keep in mind, trucks run around with 392 gears all the time, 3.92 ratio. And they run, I think, a 31-inch tall tire when they take those trucks to the drag strip. So just something to consider. If you're trying to cheat up a tire size for more of a footprint at the drag strip, that's one thing. But if not, I mean, again, 370 is about the best you're going to get out of it. Or the most aggressive I would ever put in one. Poser saying, auto industry seems to be in disarray right now due to COVID-19. Manufacturing is at a standstill. 2020 C8s might be a low production, hence increasing their value. The problem is with that, though, is that it really won't increase their value at all. The Vet as a vehicle is just going to be the Vet. In the same way that the Strike didn't make 1983 Corvettes overly valuable. In fact, people forget about it. So, by the time we're talking about Corvettes with any real enthusiasm, like Grand Sport Z06 plus the regular vet, what have you, this thing will be long forgotten about, at least in car guy terms. Let's see. Ethan saying, I have buddies with 392s that finally understand what you were talking about in regards to aftermarket. They're all getting Coyotes as well as Camaros. Dodge needs to step its game up for the 392. And guys, look, I cannot agree with that more. In fact, let's talk about that for a minute. So this is the 50th anniversary year for the Challengers. And the funny thing is that they've got this 50th anniversary Challenger. Okay, look, pretty as sin, right? But no extra power to speak of. There's no extra power, actually. Still the same 485 horse engine. And this is the 50th anniversary. Let me just put it like this. This is the 50th anniversary of one of the cars that really put Mopar on the map in the pony car wars. And we're not talking about the B-body cars. We're talking about pony car wars. And they really didn't have anything to speak about until 1970 with the Challenger. And that was really more an SCCA type racing. Funny how, people talk about Challengers as being drag cars, and one of the biggest pushes for them was actually in SCCA road racing. But anyway, but strangely enough, there's nothing really to shoot at right now with that car. There's, you got the Hellcat, you got the Red Eye. Okay, we've seen it. We know that's coming. We've been waiting for something for the NA guys now for so long that you almost, if the phone were to ring, it would scare the hell out of me. In other words, I've been waiting for this phone call for so long that, frankly, I've forgotten the phone's even still sitting there when it comes to something for the 392. More displacement, better intake manifold, something, anything. And we're just not seeing it. I mean, yeah, we got the 50th anniversary, and the 1320 it's a nice way to package some really fun gimmicks in a car. But I mean, guys, let's be real. I mean, there's just nothing really to show for it right now. I get it. Nobody saw COVID-19 coming. I mean, if they're going to introduce something, that would have been in the works 3 years ago. And they just didn't deliver. They didn't give you anything. Meanwhile, you got Ford coming out with a GT500. The GT350 just got its swan song, so it's getting jettisoned. But, Camaro's got their LT1 or whatever that package is that's cheap and hauls ass. We're just not going to ever see that from Mopar. It's not their MO. It's just not what they do. But I would have liked to have seen some kind of effort for this 50th anniversary edition. Give it something that's special as opposed to just a different color set of wheels and a shaker hood or whatever you can get on a 50th anniversary car. And then crack you upside the head in terms of cost just for the pleasure of owning one. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's see. Christian McVeigh saying, lack of manual is the only thing that ticks me off. Gives me GT500 vibes. I like it. The C8 is truly awesome besides that. And how about that interior? C7 looks prehistoric comparatively. In a way, yeah, I guess. The C8 is kind of racy, so there's that. That's kind of a cool thing. But it's a vet. I mean, it's a sports car. It's going to have some racy looking stuff going on with it. I guess my only real concern with the vet really is the transmission. I get it. We're going to see some kind of evolution of that species eventually, and we did. But I would prefer to see something, I don't know. I want to know what Dodge's answer to that car is going to be. That's really where I'm at. This is an opportunity for FCA to release into the world a traditional front engine rear drive V8 with multiple V8 platforms available, powered sports car with a true automatic and a true manual. You want to talk about capturing the enthusiast market, provided that they don't try to gouge you in pricing. that's really kind of where I'm at with it. I think if the vet gives us that, or if the vet can prod FCA in that direction, that would be great. But I'm just not so sure that we're going to see that. I mean, we've been hinted to, I should say, that Dodge was going to come out with the new Viper, right? Haven't seen it yet. And we're also told it's going to be V8 powered, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. There aren't any leaks. There's no mumbling, no grumbling, no nothing. And to be honest, we've been told we're getting a new Challenger, the CUDA, whatever, for how long now? And that was going to be the next Halo car. I mean, you just don't ever really know with Dodge. And they keep leaning on this E-body long enough. I'm sorry, E-body. They keep leaning on the LX platform long enough. You know, the modern E-body, which is the size of a B-body. You know, it's doing okay in sales, but it's just not exciting anymore for me. And that's, I guess, the bummer of it. I need a little bit more pizzazz out of Mopar. And I guess to that point, you know, showing a bunch of commercials with these things lighting the tires up and doing all of that, that's fantastic. Great marketing. You know, we're Mopar, you know, Brotherhood of Muscle or whatever kind of cringy slogan is going to be next on this agenda. The problem is that you can't keep showing the same car doing the same burnouts over and over and over again. It was cool the first 10 times we saw it, Dodge. Show me something else. I mean, realistically, is there anything else that you're going to be able to show us? I don't know. How about a teaser on the TRX? Maybe throw in an all-wheel drive burnout with a Hemi, Hellcat Hemi Durango. Something like that. Show me something cool and new. It doesn't just have to be a burnout. It can be something fun. Anyway, moving on. Chi-Town's in the house. I like it. Got the fist bump. Like it. Symphonic saying, leaked document suggests GT500 stopping production with the Mach 1 taking its place. Maybe a real drag car from Ford. I don't know, kind of like that Bullet was a real drag car too. I mean, just saying. No, I doubt it very seriously. I don't know what Ford's going to do with the Mach 1, but if it's anything like what the other Mach 1 was, it'll more or less be a dumbed down version of, well, I say dumbed down version. It'll just be a more garden variety version of a GT350. Would be my guess. In other words, maybe the flat plane crank engine sticks around. Maybe it's got an automatic version of it. Or what would be stupid, and Ford should have done this already. But what would be sick is the Voodoo engine with the dual clutch transmission. That would be pretty sick, because that engine with that transmission absolutely makes all the sense in the world. You want to talk about being on board with a car. I mean, screw the GT500. Give me a Mach 1 with the Voodoo engine and a sequential 7-speed. That would be stupid sick. And that would also be a direct line of sight competitor to the Vet. Now, I don't know about cost, but think about it for a minute. If it has all the goodies of the GT350 and it's got a transmission out of the GT500, maybe that solves a couple of problems, including an economy of scale with that transmission, which right now has a replacement cost of $20,000 just for the freaking transmission. So, but again, we start talking about cost, and that brings me to the next thing. My God, with the cost of some of these cars. Seriously, like, this is what we have to look at from now on, is just obnoxiously expensive, kind of niche one-off cars. I'll tell you what, it makes Hellcats and Mopars look even that much better. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. So the more you start talking about DSG transmissions and Voodoo engines and all these other problems, problem children that could potentially pop up, what with Voodoo motors popping and, that lack of understanding with dual clutch transmissions and high torque applications, at least by enthusiasts anyway. If you think about it, look at the Mopars, almost entirely traditional, other than variable valve timing, pretty much very familiar to anybody that's ever been around or underneath the hood of any car. Think of that for a minute, and you start looking at the offerings by Chevrolet and Ford. It makes the Dodge a little bit more comforting. It's a little bit more comfortable to own, especially if you're going to own it for any real length of time. I'm not talking about a lease here. I mean, leases are obviously, that's temporary, right? You're just going to turn the thing back in, having enjoyed your experience. But if you're going to own something, you want to own something with known durability track record. And you're just not going to find that with the GT500 and the Vet. Not saying that it's going to break. It's a machine. Everything breaks, right? The idea, though, is that for me, it just makes it a lot easier to own a Mopar. It'd be fun as hell to lease a Vet. You know what I mean? Or a GT500 for that matter. But I wouldn't want to own it, and I sure as hell wouldn't want to be around that thing past warranty. I mean, that's why modding one of those cars seems pretty ridiculous, especially if you look at the cost, again, of the transmission in relation to the rest of the car. Let me put that in perspective for you. The cost of the car, let's say it's $60,000 for the Vet. It's not, but just for the sake of argument, screw it. Let's call it $80,000. They're both roughly that cost, right? The transmission makes up a full quarter of that car. So if you're to take a quarter of that car, the cost of it, that's the transmission. Arguably, what could be, instead of the most durable part of that vehicle, actually potentially being one of the most fragile parts of that vehicle. And that's a quarter of the cost of that car. Let that sink in for a minute. In other words, if you're making payments on that car for 4 years, you'll be paying for that car for a year just to pay off your transmission. Not the tires, not the engine, not the glass, not the chassis, not the chassis components, not any of that. Just the transmission. The math sucks on stuff like that. So anyway, again, just some observations. And if it seems like I'm picking it apart, well, yeah, I'm going to pick it apart, because as a potential buyer of either a GT500 or a Vet or, you know, something newer, I'm going to be weighing my costs, weighing my options on these types of things. And for most of the people that were talking all this shit about the GT500 and I don't know what I'm talking about and all this other stuff, let me just tell you something. From, again, the practical standpoint of I'm a potential buyer, I kind of do know what I'm talking about when I say that something is an unknown entity. An unknown is that is an unknown liability to the tune of that kind of money, $20,000 odd. Hell no, I don't want to be that. What can you buy with $20,000? That isn't just a transmit. That's an entire car, an entire conveyance, not just a part. We're talking a nice ass car at that. That you can take your friends for rides and how you gonna pedal a transmission around? I'm telling you, from that point of view, from the point of view of an enthusiast, that unfamiliarity is enough to keep me from having a GT500 in my garage right now. I'll be honest with you. Had that car come with a 10-speed automatic, a built 10-speed automatic, something that could actually take the power, do you realize how quick that car would be in the quarter mile? That would be damn near a 9-second car. That'd be a 1020, 1030 car for sure in pretty much all weather. And you would have guys waiting for the Mother Nature mod to get that thing on a drag pack and get it down the drag strip as quickly as they could once, you know, the weather started turning boost friendly. You'd have freaking 9-second GT500s popping up all over the place. especially when you consider the fact that most of the time when we're talking about records, something else I'd like to talk about this evening's got me a little bit riled up. But consider the fact that these guys are not averse to stripping everything out of their cars and then waving a freaking time slip over their head like they just reinvented sex, which is funny because that's the game that we play, right? I mean, look at what my car ran, and you're going to have this time slip. I've always made it a point to have my passenger seat in my car. In fact, I've red eye-sized my Hellcat. I've got the red eye rear seat delete, a 309 gear, shift points that look eerily like a stock red eyes. It's got factory Hellcat timing all the way out until where I need to make some adjustments for my transmission tune. The only things I've done on the engine side of my car were to accommodate the engine tune. I'm sorry, the transmission tune. So anything on the engine side is just there for the transmission tune. And that's it. And in ridiculously good weather, like 0 DAs, it runs 1020s. That's about where that GT500 would be on accident with a regular torque converter automatic that you would find anywhere. And by the way, the same transmission that the rest of the Mustang GT guys are not having any problem with, at least, once they've built them up a little bit, of handling some insane power and running deep into the nines. Deep into the nines. Just saying. So, there's that. Let's see. F. Joe saying, P-Mace, hope all is well, brother. Hope all is well with you too. Saying, funny story, after bragging about smashing on some Camaros last chat, I got seriously walked on by a 01C7. They are fast. They're real fast. And you messed with him in his wheelhouse, brother. So, I mean, that's like walking into Kimbo's backyard. There's just some dudes you don't fuck with in their own backyard. So, yeah, I'm right there with you, buddy. They are quick. Roger's asking, what made you get rid of the SRT 392? That made me get rid of the SRT 392. I loved my SRT. I really did, but there was some, for financial reasons, believe it or not, I had that car and I had a truck, and I didn't need the truck anymore, and had a transmission issue with the SRT. My fault, by the way. And this car popped up for sale, and incredibly low mileage car. It was the exact car that I wanted. It's an early release, 2015. We're talking November build date of 2014. So I said, yep, that's the car for me. So to answer the question, this red thing sitting behind me is the reason why I got rid of that white car. Let's see. Chris is saying, and I know auto is quicker, but I wish they'd still offer something for enthusiasts to enjoy. I'd rather have more fun with a stick and be slower than the autos. Sorry for ranting. It's not a rant. It's the truth. Look, like I say, not everybody's into drag racing. A lot of people are not into drag racing, and they're just running their cars around on back roads, having fun with them. And that's where the manual transmission truly shines. I mean, if you never had that opportunity, that I feel bad for you, because there's nothing that beats it. And especially when you've got a car that's lightweight, nimble, with a bunch of power, and you've got a manual transmission, nothing beats that driving experience. And there's no automatic transmission that will get you to enjoy it as much as that manual. I don't care if it's dual clutch, torque converter, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's never going to be able to duplicate that fun, pure, just driving experience when you're running through the gears yourself. It's one of those things where I can try to explain it, but I certainly can't understand it for you. It's just an experience that you've got to have. F. Joe is saying, what's your take on the R35 GTRs? I don't have any real experience with them. I think that they're cool cars. I think any GTR is a cool car. It sucks that we never got a left-hand drive version of the older ones. what can I say? Very fast, not, engine geometry of the RB25 is just not as good as the 2JZ from an oiling point of view, from a oil control point of view. Not saying that you can't build them up, and actually the 2JZ's got a couple of Achilles heels that have got to be addressed, I should say, for big power. But the idea here is that you've got in any of those cars the potential to have a really fun car. And that's the thing about it, is the older cars were really cool. The older big turbo cars were a lot of fun because you hit them at low RPM and there was just nothing there. And then out of nowhere it would come on boost, and it was just such a riot. So again, from a driving standpoint, I'd love to get my hands on one. Let's see. Blacktop's asking, what's your thoughts on the Demon Killer springs on a Hellcat? Talking about the Carlisle springs. They're good. I know several people that have them, and car looks great launching. I haven't really seen a lot of difference in 60-foot and ET, but they have great weight transfer. Again, from my own experience, and this is on a car that can run nines. Deep into the nines, actually, a 980, 970 car. I just haven't seen it play out the way that you'd be led to believe that it would play out. Part of that could be driver. I'm not the one driving that car, but this thing's cutting 140, 60 foots, low 150s on stock springs. And I'm not seeing the Demon type springs getting it much better. Although I will say this, they certainly don't hurt. The only other downside to those springs is that they are soft. So just know that coming in. I think some guys were a little bit taken aback by the change in ride height. You're going to have to get the car realigned either way, but just know that they're soft, and the car will ride nice going down the freeway, if nothing else. Let's see. Ripped is asking, long tubes really don't help on a Hellcat, do they? No, not at all. We've seen them. I've driven Bravo package cars, both with stock manifolds and with long tubes. The long tubes really don't make much of a difference at all. You would need to get the 2-inch long tubes anyway. 1 7/8 isn't going to do you a whole lot of favors on these cars. If you're going to do it, you're going to need to really step up. And to be honest, you just don't see it. I would love to tell you that they pick up more somewhere, but here's the problem. When you're talking about something with forced induction, scavenging really isn't the problem. You've got still some overlap that is taking place there. And what I'm getting at is when the exhaust valve is closing, intake valve is opening, there's still an amount of overlap there. Boost is helping to scavenge that exhaust port. I'm sorry, that combustion chamber through the exhaust port by a significant margin. That pressure differential is still fairly significant. Under non-boost scenario, they work pretty well. But look, there's a reason why you don't see collector style headers on dragsters. Very rarely do you see them on never do you see them on anything with a blower. You always see the zoomies just sticking out the side. There's no need to scavenge at that point. They're using atmosphere to scavenge. The same kind of goes for anything with a positive displacement supercharger. It just doesn't lend itself to needing the scavenging because you have instant boost all the time. Now, if we're talking about something with a centrifugal supercharger, then yeah, I would say that it would help a little bit more in that respect, especially before you start really producing boost. But again, we're talking about tip-in, throttle response. We're talking about low-speed torque production. We're not talking about those things helping out on the big end. It's just not really going to help you out the way that it would on a naturally aspirated engine, where you have such a difference between the pressure pulse coming out of the cylinder and the pull of atmospheric pressure for a naturally aspirated car to draw that charge in. When you've got something cramming air into that thing all the time, no matter how open or not open that intake valve is, trust me, your scavenging's getting done. In fact, there were some interesting NACA results. This is going way back. I think they attempted to try some scavenging on World War II fighter engines. Merlins, I believe is what they were. And they were looking at how do collectors work, anything like that on those types of engines in general. And I think they were finding out even back then that for the blower motors, it didn't really matter. So going way back on that one, trying to remember a NACA deal that I remember looking up about 15 years ago. Christian's asking, do you ever mess with off-road vehicles much? Broncos, FJ Cruisers, and Jeeps? Well, my wife's got a Jeep. I've had a K10 Chevy. I've had a Samurai, as a matter of fact. I've had a Jeep Cherokee. I've done some off-road stuff, just not a whole lot. I've helped guys with builds, but I haven't really dove into anything realistically like hardcore off-road or anything like that. Not so much. I'm really more of a casual when it comes to that kind of stuff. I'm more interested in just shooting up roosts and call it good. So some, but not really a lot. If I did, it'd be more of, how fast can I go on dirt? B5 him, he's saying, what up, B-Mace? What up, man? Got the thumbs up. I like it. Rift saying, I decided to get a lower pulley on my Hellcat since that would be the safest way to go with the gas that we have here. 91 octane. Yep. Good idea. Rib's asking, does anybody else on here have their track they go to closed because of what's going on? I know mine is. Sucks. Blackbird 98 saying a bigger inch Hellcat variant would be pretty cool in a new Viper. The Viper came out of retirement to duke it out with C7. Maybe they'll bring it back for C8. So here's what I would hope. I mean, for me, you can leave it 392. Just give it a aluminum block and a different intake manifold that would be able to be waterfalled into the Challengers. The problem with the 392 is that the 392 is really good at motivating a very heavy car in a straight line very quickly. But the cool thing about the 392 is if there was a reason to have a shorter runner intake manifold, it would definitely lend itself to camshaft selection because you'd actually be able to put a cam in that car that would actually make real power. So that's what I would hope for. Oh, shoot. Hang on a second. Timeout. C10 Mob, man. What's up with that? I appreciate that. I got the 1999 in. Speaking of C10, I'm still looking for one. So keep your eyes out there for me. I may have found one, though. I may have found one, and it may be local, and I've got to go talk to the guy about it soon. So it's a root beer float. It looks like about an 83, 84. But, man, I appreciate the contribution very much. He's saying, what have you heard about the flex fuel possibilities for our Hellcat? So right now, there are some that have claimed that they've got that cracked. I don't know. I still don't have any experience with any of the systems that are reliable and viable enough to say that, yeah, this is a true flex fuel system and just let it go at that. So to give you an example, Livernois for the Trackhawks, they had a flex fuel protocol that they had come out with. This may bleed over into the Hellcats. The only experience I have with these, with this operating system was for a Trackhawk. And here's the problem. For whatever reason, and this has happened also when I was with Pikes and we were trying to get that whole thing sorted out through HP tuners. The problem is that you could have everything correct in the tune in terms of high and low slope. If you want to look at injector duty cycle type things, just basically injector data for that matter, you could have, and I could go down the list of everything you could have right. You could have everything right, and then over time, it would actually kind of start to waver off of the tune that you put together. And there's a couple of weird reasons why. Let's look at it like this. Part of the way, let's look at Demons. It's the easiest way I can explain it to you. GMs are a lot like this too, except GM can have a true sensor that it's driving me nuts that nobody has figured out a way, Lucas. Nobody's figured out a way to make the 5-volt sensor for a GM E85 sensor work in a Mopar operating system. I know that there are provisions in there, but anyway, getting back to it. The problem is that the operating system rides the NOx sensors to figure out what is going on with the fuel quality in some cases. This is how the Demon figures out if it's got high octane in it, like 100 plus octane or 93 octane. If it starts to see a certain amount of knock retard and it is under the influence of the crate tune, it's going to assume that it's got 93 octane in it, and it's just going to default to that timing table. My understanding is that that's one of the issues here, because what happens if you tune one of these cars, you don't want to get into false knock. And all of them, and when I say all of them, I mean all of the Mopars are extremely skittish when it comes to their knock sensors. Now, I've told the story before about these things just for apparently no reason, throwing 3 degrees of knock retard in my trucks, just driving down the road, like literally with the cruise control on flat, level ground, just, goes into freak out mode. So all that being said, when you go to adjust the knock sensor voltage sensitivities, for lack of a better way of putting it, again, I'm not trying to get too nerd on you here, but what that does is it affects how the car sees the actual octane. So if it doesn't see any knock, it assumes that it's got a higher octane in it than what it does. In this case, it would assume that it had E85 in it when it really didn't, if the knock sensor sensitivity were set way out of whack, which some guys have done. So anyway, it's a long way to try to explain that the Livernois truck that we were messing with, it developed a hot start issue where on E85, it would cold start fine, drive the thing around for a while. If you still had E85 in it, you go to start the vehicle and it flat out would not fire. And no problem with crankshaft position sensor or no sensors were out of whack on this. It was just what ended up happening with this thing. And so we ended up, without trying to chase this thing, because you start trying to chase these types of dragons, man, believe me, you will never catch them. At least not in these types of time frames, and nobody's paying you to do R&D. You just have to kind of do this on your own. Basically just said, look, cut it and chalk it. You want to run this thing on E85, you need to have an E85 dedicated tune. So leading into that, everything was kind of working fine with that thing. It just slowly progressed, and it was like a long-term fuel trim issue. It just slowly progressed into more or less a lean issue with that truck. So I don't know. They're still trying to get it figured out. I don't know if it's how far out it is. I mean, you can still tune them to run straight E85 and then just switch your tune whenever you go back to 93. A little bit of a hassle, and obviously the whole reason why you would want to be able to do this is to take advantage of the E85 all the time, except when you need the range of 93 octane fuel. So there's that. Another thing though, I will say this when it comes to the flex fuel side of it. The problem with flex fuel, and this is one of the issues that I've seen, is so you get this tune for E85, and you'll have a default setting for when the sensor drops below a certain number, then you immediately go into this next timing table that basically rips all the timing out of the car or truck. The problem is if you're running a bunch of boost, it may not matter if you're yanking, 4, 5, 6 degrees of timing out of it. It's going to make it a turd, and it's going to potentially cause some other issues. So you just got to be careful with some of the 85s, depending on flex fuel setups, depending on how much boost you're running. Sometimes it's better to have 2 dedicated tunes. Have the laptop with you, and if you need to make the switch, pretty easy to make that switch. But thank you very much. I appreciate the contribution to the cause, my man. All I can tell you any more on that is that they're still working on it, and if they can just get that GM sensor to work and then have a way to tie it into the existing system, that would be really cool. But until then, we're kind of screwed. Let's see. I think the next was, hang on a second. I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. Okay, Boat 392 was asking, he was up next, saying opinion of the early Chrysler 392 Hemi. It's actually a pretty cool engine. But the 342, I think there was also the 345. There was a bunch of smaller Hemis back then too. Good engines. I mean, they were used. The 392 is actually, the original 392 has got a very rich racing history, as do the smaller Hemis. But the 392 particularly with drag racing and with boats. So cool engine. Obviously, it was superseded pretty quickly by some of the bigger wedge motors, only to make a new comeback with the 426 in 1964. Interestingly enough, though, even back then, there were some guys that were saying, it's the street Hemi isn't a real Hemi. A real Hemi needs to be a solid lift car. And anyway, there was a bunch of old farts talking shit about the street Hemi back then. 392 will walk all over a 426. Anyway, back when I was a real young kid, hanging around a bunch of these car guys that were about my grandfather's age, or old even by granddad standards. The the Mopar guys still hated each other even back then. So we'll see what it does when you put nitro to it, and all this other stuff. It's just kind of funny. But cool engines, they sound great. If you were ever to build one, you'd have to go full forged internals. The internals kind of suck on those engines in terms of longevity. The crank's pretty decent, but the rods are junk. So, but I'd still go forged crank rods, pistons, kind of a mild cam, and just let them run. But they ran great. Let's see. Rip saying, I still have to say, though, I've seen many 392s beat Mustangs and Camaros like Rush Shift Channel. Well, I'll tell you this. My 392 never saw the taillights of a Camaro. Not a naturally aspirated one. And would give a 5th gen ZL1 all it could handle and then some. But even the Mustangs, I never really lost a race at the drag strip to a Mustang. I had one that was unimaginably close where the guy was just reeling me in on the big end. But, on the drag strip where it's legal, when you're on a tire, I'm telling you, that car doesn't give up that much. It'll give up some in mile an hour, but what it gives up in mile an hour on the back half of the track, bro, it chases a race, man, and you got to fetch that thing before you get around it. I can't tell you how many heads cam intake manual transmission C6 Corvettes that I raced with that car. And I mean a lot of them. And the race would almost always end up just like this. I would have to win on a hole shot. They would reel me in like a 2-pound trout at the back half of the track, but they would not get around me for the win light. Almost every single time, that's how that race would go. And when I say they would start reeling me in, I mean at the 8th mile, those headlights were getting really big, okay? So, from a roll, God, it wouldn't even be a race. But from a dig on a tire, it was such a good race. A lot of fun races like that too. A lot of really cool guys that I would roll up on with in that situation too. Let's see. Oh, Christian saying, did y'all see that Track Attack S550? It's a manual GT with a 2020 GT500 engine swap. Yeah, VMP did that. I haven't had a chance to actually spend any real time with that, but I have seen or have heard of it and was looking forward to finding out how they liked it. I have a feeling that would be a badass car. Now just do it with a 10R80, a built 10R80. Rip saying it's that extra torque that makes them compete. Absolutely it is. Let's see. No speed limit checking in saying, what's up? What's good, everybody? Building a 1500 plus twin turbo Hellcat. Hopefully it finishes next week. Very nice. Got a couple of builds like that are going on right now. Be interesting to see how well they do with some of the newer turbo kits. HU37 saying VMP sells their Odin supercharger for the 2018 and 19 Mustang GTs with the 10-speed transmission. They run in the low 10s. What are your thoughts on going that way as opposed to a GT500? Well, here's the thing. It's the money is smarter going that way. I'll tell you that. And look, I can, every one of the guys that I roll with that has a Mustang that goes to the drag strip runs 9s. It might not be deep into the 9s, right? But I mean, it's like a 990 car. And these are, 990, maybe 980s. These are E85, not super high boost, just, like a good running street car. Built transmission, oil pump gears, basically done right, not hacked, just a done right kind of car will certainly go 10.0, 10.2s all day long. And on corn, where you can actually pull a little bit more timing in it, they'll go 990s, high 980s. So, look, a GT500 ain't doing that, period. Like full stop, period, too. Put them on a drag pack and they still might go 1040s in really good air. Pull a 1030 out of it just for shits and grins, right? That still is not a 9-second pass. And certainly not for the money that you would have in that Mustang. Now, keeping in mind, we're not that deep into 2020 with the release of the GT500. And admittedly, I still think that they're probably 3 years late, 4 years late releasing that GT500. But anyway, I digress. The thing that you got to remember is that everybody with a GT is licking their chops waiting on a GT500 to show up. Whether it's an NA GT running low 11s or it's a supercharged GT running low 10s, either one is going to give that GT500 all it can handle and then some. Because if that low 11-second Mustang GT driver is on his game, and chances are he is because he built a low 11-second GT, it's going to be a chase for that GT500 to catch it because they 60 foot so weakly. So just think of it in those kind of terms. If it's my money, and I've said this so many times and I'm almost sick of hearing myself say it, but if it's my money and I'm going to build a race car, like a true, like street strip race car that is more race than anything, it's going to be a Mustang. Mainly because they're cheap. And they're known entities, and you can get them fixed anywhere. Built transmissions aren't that expensive, at least by comparison. And, like I say, you build a 9-second car practically by accident once you start, adding in corn and things like that. So, why would I even be bothered with a GT500? It just doesn't make good sense. Not to mention the fact that, a lot of guys are, again, they're real skittish about GT500s right now. I'll be honest with you. Again, like I've said, if it weren't for that transmission, you might see a GT500 sitting behind me right now as opposed to this thing. The problem is I really like my Hellcat. And, she punches a whole lot higher than her weight class is, too. For this thing to be able to go honest to goodness 1020s in 0 DA, which is, you correct it to 0. That's why I always make sure I give the density altitude. Yeah, it's gone 1016, but in negative DA. In flat DA, it's gone mid 1020s like clockwork. That's about where you would be with a GT500 with a normal automatic torque converter style transmission. So when you take that into account and you're being honest with yourself as a car guy, I mean, I love Mopars, don't get me wrong, I always have, but I started off life as a Ford guy because that's all I had. That's all that was available. And I learned everything that I've learned really on the back of a Mustang. So there's that to consider. But when you're talking about the GT500, again, from an enthusiast standpoint, where you look at it and you go, damn, I'm afraid of the proposition of that transmission letting go, especially in light of the fact that the car has drag mode. Well, I drag race a lot. Like every weekend that the track is open, you'll find me there. I'm not difficult to locate. And I guess the point that I'm making is I would hate to be driving the car that has drag mode, but it's not a drag race car, but it has drag mode on a drag strip and have it fail in a way that would cost me not just some money. I mean, any amount of money that you have to spend that's not planned for, it sucks, right? But this is like life-altering amounts of money if warranty doesn't cover it. You want to talk about replacing a transmission that costs a quarter of what that vehicle cost to buy new? You're done at that point most of the time. Most people, look, you blow up an HP 70 in a 392 car, cost you about $3,000, right? Not including fluids, but it's going to still cost you about $3,000, maybe $3,500. Pop one of these, add another G to that, call it $4,500. That's going to hurt a lot. That's going to sting, but it's not $20,000 if you have to buy a new transmission. Do they even repair them anymore? Those are the types of things that, as an enthusiast, I take a look at that and I just want to start backing away about as quickly as possible. You ever see a dog when it's in trouble and it's like, I don't like that? That's exactly where I am with that car. And it's a shitty place to be for me because I was so in love with, I am so in love with the GT500 circa 2007 on up to 14. They had their quirks, I get that, but the reality is that I've had a boatload of fun in those cars. I mean, just as a street car, just a bruiser, and it didn't even have to exist. You got to remember that this is a car that Ford put out there at a time where it had zero competition. There was no Camaro. There was no Challenger of any kind. But yet they still put out the GT500. It was freaking cool on a different level. 500 horsepower, 500 pound-feet of torque. It was the return of the big block, where the Terminator Cobra was the return of like big block, but the GT500 was the return of like hardcore big block, not some 428. We're talking like Seidel or 427 kind of power, and it well into that potential if we're talking about a race setup. Nothing but upshot for that thing. Those cars were a riot, and that's what I had envisioned for the 2019, 2020 GT500. A car that would fall in line with that mentality, to bring that, I don't know, to bring that just badassery ethos back to Ford. But this is what we got. We got something that was more along the lines of a journalist's wet dream and an enthusiast nightmare. Like, all wrapped into one. It just cringy as hell. Anyway, sorry about the rant. I don't even remember what the question was. Let's see. Oh, talking about the VMP. Okay. Rip is saying, I'm glad to hear that more people are doing twin turbo Hellcats. I was hoping for that when I first got into them. I'm happy to hear about them too. But what no limits probably, or no speed limits probably finding out is packaging is a mother on these cars. The reason for that is there is no inner fender well that you can remove and kind of help to, I don't know, plumb the system a little bit easier. What you end up doing is you end up running the turbos right about here. And there's a very limited space in that area. And so, anyway, long story short, I feel your pain, brother. I feel your pain. Blue Collar saying, I had a 1320 ordered after 5 months of waiting, went 19 A10 boosted with Edelbrock 2650, probably my favorite. Stage 2 on the third engine and 5,000 miles, and maybe my fourth today. Old man on 93. Oh no. Yeah, so that, yeah, we need to get you squared away. I don't know who's squaring you up on your tunes, brother, but we got to talk about that. Eesh. Anyway, yeah, give VMP or Pipes a shout, please. Go with somebody that's going to help you not have to go through that again, I hope. Blue Collar is asking, what is needed to tune a 2020 Scat ECT? You need to pull the computer, send it to HP Tuners, have them unlock it, and then you need HP Tuners tuning software. Once you've got that, you're free to tune at your leisure, sir. Wade saying furs, please. Roger's saying they should start making CUDA 426s. The problem is, what would a CUDA be, though? One of the issues that's come up a lot when it comes to Mopars is, what do we do with the LX LA platform? A lot of talk initially was that they were going to move more towards a modified LXLC platform. Let's call it LX just because it's shorthand for the generic version of this thing, which covers the Magnum, the 300, the Charger, the Challenger. That's your LX platform family. And there was a lot of talk about modifying the current LX platform because the Ghibli platform just didn't catch on. It was just never going to get there. And of course, the Giulia platform was going to be too small. And I think they figured out that they couldn't stick a V8 in there of any kind with any proper packaging. And so it was kind of told to jog on. So they already had this platform, and then they were, well, let's be honest. I mean, they've already relicensed the LX platform, I think, twice now. So they re-upped twice, with my understanding being that they re-upped it through 2023, which at that point, they may make some tweaks to it and re-sign with Mercedes-Benz for the next foreseeable future for the LX platform, which would move us past 2023, probably into 2028, 2030. And again, that would usher in your CUDA, your new generation Challenger, new generation Charger, things like that. Where Dodge is doing a good business right now, though, is bookending the marketplace. And what that means is you've got Mustang on one end and you got Mopar on the other. You got Mustang, light, agile, quick, you know, the darling of the aftermarket. And then you got Mopar, which actually does a hell of a job of putting something out into the world that's extremely well sorted from the factory. So you got that action happening right there. But it's the middle ground that Chevrolet was trying to fill, and it just tanked. It couldn't deliver the snappiness that the 6.4 offers. Couldn't deliver the on drag strip performance with the ZL1 that the Hellcat offers, much less a Red Eye or a Demon, but you know, Demon, right? But and for whatever it did better than the Mustang was just a lot more endearing. So more people just bought Mustangs, especially when you take the ergonomics of that car into account, which you will. So that's where you saw the huge shift away from the center. People started polarizing because they could get more of what they wanted. If you wanted something like a Mopar, you got all a Mopar, not just a little bit. Same goes with the Mustang. Hang on a second. All right, hang on. Miami checking in 1320 with the contribution to the cause. Asking any thoughts on upgrading Hellcat lifters to Johnson on my 426 build. The only thing I will say to that with the Johnsons or any of the limited travel lifters or anything like that, I've run Hellcat lifters on every cam that I have designed for Pike's Performance. That is the way that that's the way that I personally would go. Johnson lifters are great though. I personally haven't run them because I haven't needed to run them. The RPM range of the cars that I've run the Hellcat lifters on has been right around a max of about 7,000, 7,100 RPM. They seem to handle that just fine. It's the push rods that don't. So make sure if you're going to be spinning it really high, make sure your spring pack is right. Make sure your push rods are right. Those are things that are going to fail and give you a bigger headache faster than those Hellcat lifters. But if you want to go with a known upgrade lifter, the Johnsons are good. But again, make sure you're pairing them with the right push rods and the right springs. The lifter, again, great idea. I say go for it. Okay, it's me doing a 426. It's going to be a part anyway. Sure, go for it. But please, 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 080 minimum push rods. If you plan on spooling this thing up really high, go with the 120s. PSI 1516 spring pack. Believe me when I tell you, you want as much valve train control as you can get because you've got a heavy ass intake valve. You're going to want to have as much control over that as you can possibly get. Plus, your camshaft is going to have an aggressive lobe. I'll be honest with you, a lot of these modern cams that are roller cams look like a solid lifter profile. I mean, I don't know what you would consider like the lash part of the ramp, where it loads up the lifter or loads up the valve train, basically where the load kind of comes in like that and comes up basically straight up. There's a very small amount where it's kind of a shallower ramp. That'll help you, but I mean, I'm just here to tell you, go with those lifters, but please make sure you're upgrading everything else, significantly upgrading. And by the way, there's never any such thing as a no spring required cam. Anyway, Gonzo checking in, saying if you can see my message above. Well, thank you, Gonzalo. I appreciate that. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Let's see. Gonzalo. Oh, here you say, hey, new big fan. Thank you very much. Appreciate the kind words. Just paid his 2017 Challenger RT. I have about $8,000 saved. I want to put into the engine. What's the best route you recommend to beat or hang with a 392? Give Dr. Differential a shout. You can go ported intake. Let me see this real quick. 2017 Challenger RT. All right. So you may not, I don't even know how, I'm going to spend all your money here. Ported intake manifold, go with one of Dr. Diff's camshafts. Technically, it's one of my camshafts. But I helped him to develop his program and got a real fun camshaft for 5.7. It's called the Joker cam. It's a cam that'll work really well NA for a 5.7. Also works great on nitrous, hence the name. Long tube headers, pick a cat back. And that's about where I would take that car. I know that his dad's car has, in fact, when you call Dr. Differential, have him send you a clip of his dad's car with that Joker cam. I think you're going to like it. In fact, he just got through putting that cam in a truck, and that owner is over the moon happy with that thing. He's not even running long tubes. And I'm like, dude, you're nutty if you run that cam without long tubes. But that's what he's doing. So anyway, go for something like that. Have some fun with it. I mean, if you've got the thing already locked down and you've got some money to spend on it, now's the time to do it. And as far as gearing goes and stuff like that, I would go 309 with limited slip. If your RT didn't already come with the 309, it should have with limited slip though. but just go down your build sheet and verify all of that. But all that being said, I mean, you got the right car, man. It's a 2017 RT. It's already an 8-speed. You got some things really going for you. Anyway, long story short, his dad, I know, goes sniping after 392 cars. So I'll let him tell you the rest of the stories because, you know, he's got more of them in the bag than I do. But I know that little cam in that car and in that truck, by the way, runs really nice. So just saying. But thank you so very much. I appreciate the kind words and the contribution, man. Both of y'all, all of y'all, man. Y'all make the support really helps me out a ton, guys. Thanks to you guys again. Let's see. Let me get back here. Been kind of yammering on here. C10 Mob. I'm gonna have to let you know if that guy will turn that freaking truck loose, man. It's a root beer float truck, by the way, too. So if I can get my hands on it, I'll be really stoked. Let's see. Oh, hang on. Sorry about that. Ooh, hold on. We're gonna have to chat about that lightning here. Man, I don't want to pass anybody up. Hang on, let's see. Timeout. Hope I didn't pass anybody up. Let's see. I think I did. Well, hopefully I didn't pass you up. Sorry, guys. Timeout. See Lone Wolf Customs in there. Let's see. Well, I'm just going to have to start yammering here. One of my neighbors' truck, I guess he's got one of the big air horns on his truck. Let's see. Where did I miss out? Anyway, sorry if I didn't missing anybody here. Let's see. Blue collar's in. You got the 1320. There's the first thing. What happened to my feed? My feed just flaked out, guys. Bear with me. Forgive me here. Just a second. Let's see. Okay, I was going to start here because I don't know, my feed kind of flaked out on me. I went to flick it back to where I was, and I think I blew past it and screwed up. Let's see. Riff saying, I think just getting a 2015 or newer Coyote Mustang and adding a supercharger would be a better idea than getting a GT350. It's a lot less expensive. Yeah, it's just, again, for me, it's just more the unknown with that transmission. Let's see. Oh, Blue Collar and Rift are hanging out here for a second. See, Roger's saying, is an SRT 392 a better daily? I tell you what, I didn't have any problem daily in my 392. I had a blast with it. As a matter of fact, they ride really, really nicely. You put that thing in street mode and it just kind of floats. So, yeah, I would say it makes a great daily. You know, you got to feed the thing, but yeah, it's a lot of fun to drive daily. Let's see. Oh, H237 saying, at this point with the coronavirus and recession, I don't think car companies will come out with much that is new. I doubt the sales volume will be there. Be careful about that because right now there is a vacuum. There is a buyer demand vacuum being created by this. Don't be surprised that when you start seeing things open up here in the next 2 to 3 months, don't be surprised if you start to see a lot of purchases come out of nowhere. There's going to be some folks that are going to be, catching up with their buying, and they're also going to be, coming off of furloughs and things like that, where they're just getting back into the workforce. Give them a little bit of time, but be on the lookout because I have a feeling you're going to see a lot of folks being real happy to spend some money. Trust me on that. Let's see. Oh, Blue Collar saying that 12-to-1 compression hasn't been kind to me. I had to take my 50 states legal kit and turn it down 2 psi after the third engine and may have popped it today on a 0 to 60 test. Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that, brother. That sucks, man. Never cool to hear that. What gas are you running in that thing? What fuel are you running? Anyway, sorry about that. Squirrel. Christian saying, hopefully this whole thing will come to an end before automakers take that big of a hit. Oh yeah, it'll come to an end pretty quickly. And there's still a lot of people still buying cars and working, and it sucks that some people are getting screwed on this deal. Some significantly more than others, but there's still a lot of folks working, still a lot of folks that are buying stuff. So, luckily it's not a complete, basically chop and throttle on the faucet here, but it's a big enough sting to where it's got everybody's attention. So, all I can say is, everybody look, keep wearing your mask, keep wearing your gloves, practicing your social distancing. Like I said, Little Miss Revlon's been social distancing away from Mustangs and Camaros now for a while, so it's nothing new for us. But, keep up the good work, y'all, and let's get through this. Let's punch through this, and, we'll come out the back half of this, better for the experience, hopefully. Let's see. Oh, Blue Collar saying, I can't find anything new with a 6.4 around here. It's like they all disappeared, much less get a deal. Yeah, you might have to search out a little bit. Like I say, the 6.4s are great cars. I've had a lot of fun with mine. Definitely miss it. Blackbird saying GT500 is 3 years too late, in my opinion, and dead in the water. They cost 75 grand, but you have to pay the Shelby tax and markup at dealerships. Real talk on that. 100% agree with you on it being too late, by the way. Rushif saying, hello, Rushif, what's up? Let's see. Rift is saying, I can't get heat to come out of the left side vents on my Hellcat. What's the easiest way to fix that? Little knob at the bottom where you have to turn it, I think, to the right. That'll open up the main door. Should let the air out of there. Blue Collar Daily, yep. The one I've seen personally had 30 ADM markup per coronavirus. Holy crap. Pre the Rona. What the hell? 30? Are you kidding me? Hell no. Oh, he's saying that his mixer door looks like it's broken. Ooh, that sucks. Check the door at the vent, though. Those typically don't break. Blackbird, the GT is faster than the GT500 after modding it. Yeah, it is, considerably. Blue Collar saying 10R90 versus 10R80, like y'all get the ZF8 HP90 versus the HP70. Yeah, the 90 is supposed to be a little bit better. It's 900 Newton meters is what it's rated to. So, and the 10R80 is rated to 800 Newton meters. But the funny thing about that is the HP90, it's like, yeah, it's really rated to a lot more than that, but they'll give it 90 or 900 Newton meters. The 70 is pretty accurate. I've seen those start to slip with nitrous hits, but then again, that's nitrous. So what do you expect? Let's see. HU37 saying FCA has been pretty much recycling what Daimler Chrysler developed or had on the drawing board. FCA's lack of innovation could hurt them in the long run. Well, the problem is that their buyers, their market isn't that concerned with the newest, latest, and the greatest. Oddly enough, FCA is lucking out with this because their buyers want big cars, big push rod, torque converter, slush box automatics that happen to sound amazing and do killer burnouts. That's really what they're driving towards. So it may hurt them on one end, yeah, maybe, but only from a media point of view, only from a journalist point of view. From an enthusiast point of view, they're a freaking riot. I mean, the thing is that with the Mopars, this is what I've always noticed with the Mopars. No matter what, they were always more fun to drive. Whether it was like a 5.7 Challenger versus, I don't know, pick something else. It doesn't matter, like an older 5-liter Mustang, pre-15. Those cars were faster. The Mustang was faster, but the Challenger with the 6-speed was just a little bit raunchier in a way. The Challenger with the Nag 1 and the 5.7 was just a little bit beefier for some reason. It was just a different driving experience. That's the cool thing about Mopar, is that you've got that uniquely American meat and potatoes throwback driving experience. It doesn't all have to be, you know, with some kind of a foreign accent to be cool. I mean, it can talk with a little bit of twang and still get the job done. And that's really where Mopar shines. Unfortunately, some will say it's getting long in the tooth. I don't subscribe to the long in the tooth as much as I just would like to see some level of innovation or some level of support for the enthusiast. And now we would be talking. And if that were the case, I wouldn't care if this LX platform went to 3020 as opposed to 2023. If they had a strong backing for the enthusiast market, it would make all the difference in the world. And it would actually add a little bit of validation to the old school look and the old school marketing that they basically employ, which is tire smoke and rock and roll music and everything else. America, but don't modify it. Don't freedom your car up at all, because we'll chop your off at the knees if, you know, we find out that, you know, there's been any modification done. But America and tire smoke, freedom. Talking out both sides of your mouth, Dodge. So anyway, just a small rant on my end. Lone Wolf saying hi, B. Hi, Lone Wolf. Christian McVeigh saying 2020 GT500 just isn't as cool from the ones before it, from the overkill styling, from the dainty pinker finger transmission dial. Exactly. It's hard for me to get on board with that. So call it what you will, but I'm right there on board with you. And I got to tell you guys, man, as much as I want to be on board with that car, you're exactly right. The cool ain't there anymore. And that's the problem with the new cars in a way. The cool is gone. And you can talk about, well, transmission shifts faster. I don't care. I don't care. Tens. Yeah, but the transmission fit mid-tens. Yeah, but the transmission so much. I'm sorry, low tens. Yeah, but if you do this, if I pull enough weight out, it'll go a 9. And it's a stock boost car, and it's on 93 octane, and it's that fast, and it's a slush box automatic, and I can get 23 miles per gallon on a road trip. Come on, give me a break. Everything that everybody has said negative about Dodge, it's funny because you're telling me bad news, but it's not. Everything that I ever hear about Dodge, it's always a good thing. It doesn't always have to be the most latest and most greatest to be the best. Sometimes it's cool to just have cool. And let the rest of the technology-based guys duke it out in the middle of the parking lot. We'll just be too busy making out with their girlfriends because our cars are big enough. And so Christian saying, oh, here we go. Cool Dog saying, what do you think of a 150 shot 5.7 with a Victor 95 millimeter throttle body and Hellcat intake? Would that work for a daily driver? Can the drivetrain handle this power between 470 and 500 wheel horsepower on the HP70? So here's the thing. With a 5.7, it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal because you didn't mention anything about camshafts or anything like that. My only pressure point when it comes to this is going to be the HP70. I would highly suggest, let me look at this one more time here. If this is as far as you're going to take the car, $150 shot on a 5.7 with a Victor and a 95 millimeter throttle body, Hellcat intake, you probably wouldn't even have to worry about that at that point. It would work perfectly as a daily driver. Don't get me wrong. It would be just fine. But you also didn't say the year of the car. If this is an 8-speed car, well, yeah, you did because it's an HP70, so it doesn't really matter. It's an HP70 setup. For me, I would say you're in pretty good shape. I would probably suggest if you're going to be pulling the thing apart to that level, put a different camshaft in it. Put something in it that's going to work for nitrous. I would certainly invest in a set of long tubes just because with the stock cam, that intake valve, the intake runner is just so freaking active with that cam. And what I mean by that is because the lobe separation angle is very wide, you're cracking the exhaust early, like super early on that cam. You're shutting it off early, and the majority of your intake charge is running through your intake runners as opposed to being scavenged and having both valves open at the same time. Long and short of it, that cuts out a lot of pumping losses, and that's why tighter LSAs will pick up more power. The thing about it, though, is that I would prefer to see something that is going to be a little bit more friendly to you just driving the thing around normally. And so a small cam, something along the lines of, say, something in the 2 teens on the intake side, mid 220s on the exhaust, 230 maybe on the exhaust. Something like that would help you a lot. In fact, I would do all of that before the nitrous. Get the thing really up and running right, and then throw the dope at it and see what you think. C10 Mob saying, good evening, Master Mopar. Good evening, sir. Appreciate you hanging out again. Thank you for the contribution to the cause. Speed Freak 93 saying, Professor Mason, can you explain what causes belt slip? Is power loss from it, and how can it be prevented on a pulleyed Hellcat? So what happens with that, a couple of things can happen. Barring moisture or anything like that, something getting on the belt that would cause it to lose traction. What causes belt slip is either a bad tensioner that's going bad, so the spring's kind of getting a little bit on the weak side, or a belt that is kind of stretched, although these modern tin ribs on a Hellcat just really don't stretch a lot. These are industrial grade, like heavy machinery belts, so they're not really going anywhere. But what causes it could be the delta, the difference between your crank pulley and your blower pulley. Modern cars with modern superchargers, these twin screw types or hybrid types, however you want to look at them, there's all different types, but not really roots, not really lobes, but a male and female rotor pack. They're invariably going to be smaller because they have to fit underneath the hood of a car than like a normal big root style supercharger. Anyway, you have to pulley them up. So the RPM has to be significantly higher than the engine RPM to generate the amount of boost that you want. To do that, you have to create a situation where your drive pulley is bigger than your driven pulley. And because that creates a high amount of load, you can have slippage at that crank, at the snout pulley, at the supercharger. So what you can do to help eliminate that, number one, make sure your belt's not in bad shape. Check it, make sure it's not dry, not cracked, things of that nature. Once you determine that your belt's in good shape, you can put a larger set of idler pulleys on the vehicle or a separate standalone idler pulley. And what that'll do is it'll allow the belt to wrap around the snout more, to basically cover more surface area on that snout. What that'll do is it'll just give that belt more traction and more grip so that it doesn't slip on those pulleys. Another way that you can do this is you can size the pulleys properly for the boost that you're looking to make, and also size the supercharger properly for the amount of power that you want to make. So what does all that mean? Okay, well, it means this. If you've got a stock 2.4 blower on your car, you've got enough blower there to feed basically, deep into the 9-second zone for these cars. But if you try to pulley them more than, say, a 10% lower and a 255 upper, like 2.5 inch upper, that is a huge difference. You got a 10% lower pulley, which is about as big around as my head, and a 2.5 inch supercharger pulley. That's a huge difference to try to make up when you were talking about how much faster the blower is spinning now than the crank. So what you do is try to run either a larger crank or a larger driven pulley, or get a larger supercharger and not try to overdrive your supercharger, because that can cause other issues. That causes heating issues, which is bad. Overheat a blower, overheat the air charge rather, and it just you're yanking too much timing. You're going to have a bad time. So the easiest way to cure that problem is have the right size supercharger for the power that you're going to run. But to cure belt slip, idler pulleys are going to be where you want to go. Calcine and I say, is it possible to get a Scat Pack Challenger down to the 3,600 pound range? It is, but it takes a lot of weight cutting. And when I say a lot of weight cutting, I mean stuff's coming out of the dash, stuff's coming out of the doors. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to turn it into a drag pack car. So all you've got to do is look up Challenger drag pack. And I mean the true drag pack Challenger. That's what's going to basically be your roadmap for dropping weight on one of these cars. To significantly drop weight. We're talking bumper supports, everything. I mean, everything is going to have to be considered in that weight reduction program. All right. Let's see. Oh, we're kind of getting a funky feed here. Okay, got C10 Mob in. Again, thank you very much for the contribution, my friend. EG Performance saying, what's up, Mr. Mason? Glad I can check in and watch your stream. Thank you very much, man. Happy to have you. Thank you. Rift is saying, but seriously, though, the 2015 and newer Coyote motors can handle a lot of power. All you need to do is fix the oil pump gears, and you will have a better car than a GT500 with a 6-speed or a stick. I will agree with that. It has been proven. I don't have to agree with it. I mean, it's a proven combination. Roger's saying, SRT 392 Challenger A8 versus 2018 Auto 5.0 Mustang. Who wins? I was told Mustangs. If so, what mods would take you above the Mustang? Driver mod. That's all you need. I never really lost to a Mustang. Not in that, guys. Not stock, for sure. Put them both on a drag pack. It's going to be a very close race. Mustang is going to have to catch it. Here's a trick with a Mustang. 5th gear. The problem with the Mustang, the 8-speed, if you want to call it this. I mean, tough to call a problem here, right? But the problem with the 8-speed is the 4 to 5 shift. There's a kind of a significant drop in RPM, which is fine. But the Mustang in that 10-speed has a lesser drop on that 4-5 shift. Keeps that car in its power band. And I would argue that gear alone, because they're identical, the gear ratios, a lot of people don't understand this. The gear ratios are more or less interchangeable from the 8-speed automatic and the 10-speed automatic right up until the 4-5 shift, that 5th gear. That's where you notice the difference. It's the equivalent, kind of the equivalent, if you want to think of it like this, of putting a gear in a Hellcat, like a 309 in a Hellcat, where you just carry the RPM better at the back half of the track with the gear when it's, stock boostage like my car. Same kind of idea applies with that 10-speed automatic. It's just carrying that RPM better out the back door. But I never had a problem with dealing with a 5-liter Mustang with my SRT 392, drag pack for drag pack. Even some of the tuned cars, I never really had a problem with them unless it was like a full bolt-on, weight-reduced E85 car. Those cars would start to come around me at about the 1,000-foot mark. Maybe a little bit later than that. Actually, it would be a little bit later than that. About the 1,100-foot mark. But those were so few and far between when I had my car that it almost didn't count in a way. So anyway, it doesn't take much to run with them on the drag strip. On the street from a roll, it's kind of tough to beat the Mustang, especially, again, once they hit 5th gear. It's a damn gear. I'm just telling you. But what mods? Tune, trans-tune, Hellcat airbox with a Hellcat filter, ported intake, and maybe a true through ported throttle body. Kind of helps round out that package. And if you really want to be competitive, then you got to really start spending some money at this point, man. So just know that coming into it, we're talking camshaft and long tubes, and there's going to be a lot of things that are going to have to start coming together to really get creative. You can start losing weight with it, so you can go, seats, and let your imagination run wild when it comes to that. So let's see. Oh, Riff saying up 392 would win. Yeah, like I say, I've shown a bunch of Mustangs my taillights with the 392, and again, that was drag pack for drag pack. So some of them were whole shot victories, but a lot of them weren't. So Alex is saying, hey Mason, what is the Peugeot merger going to mean for the Challenger and Charger? Right now, brand manager, I cannot remember the guy's name to save my life right now, for SRT, really nothing right now. There's not anything that's really showing to be there's no barometer to really check for change in that respect, but so far as we can tell, it's all systems go as far as Hellcat, Red Eye, anything that is Jeep related, anything that is Ram related. All of those things are still good to go. Where you'll see the Peugeot merger start to come in a little bit will be in smaller cars, world platform cars, things like that. But for the America stuff, I don't see there being much of a difference. And that's kind of what they've said. That's why they bought the brands that they want. I mean, they bought FCA in total, or they merged, I should say, with FCA in total, but it was for those brands that they wanted. And I think they're just going to leave Dodge and Jeep and Ram to do their own thing. Roger's saying, I've seen some beat the M6, haven't seen anything on autos yet. All right, gotcha. Let's see. Probably talk about the M6 Challengers. Yeah, that's not a real quick car in the quarter mile. Fun car to drive, but not good in the quarter. Rip's saying, I'm in the process of buying a Lightning right now. I was looking for a Firebird, but I found a very good Lightning for cheap. Yes, one of my favorite vehicles I've ever owned. I've owned 2 Lightnings, and I loved both of them. Kicking myself in the ass for getting rid of one of them. Steven's saying, is it true the 5.7s are as fast as the older 6.1s? They're very close. They dyno very close. And with the added advantages of the 8-speed automatic versus the NAG 1, yeah, from a dig, 5.7s will give 6.1s a fit. From a roll, 6.1 the extra torque of the 6.1 will sometimes help them on the big end, but they're extremely close. They are extremely close. Let's see. Mr. NoHo, here he is, saying, new to the channel, love the content, keep it up. Thank you very much. Cool Dog saying, no, TGE 6.1 is faster stock to stock. The thing is, though, is that I've seen them line up at the drag strip, and yeah, the 6.1 wins, but guys, we're not talking about deep margins of victory here. Out of the whole, the 5.7 gets that 6.1 a lot to contend with. I don't know, man. I'll tell you this, though. If you're asking which one I would rather own, it'd be the 6.1. I would love to do a build on a 5.7, but if someone were to just go, look, man, I got keys to one of these 2 cars. Which one do you want to drive? I kind of like the 6.1 with the NAG 1, man. It's kind of one of my first loves. And if I were to do kind of a personal build, not something specific for the channel or something I was just trying to go after a number, but just something that would be a really fun cruiser, it'd be a 6.1, NAG 1, drop it, CCW wheels, long tubes, probably try to find an SRT exhaust somewhere, but if I couldn't find it, that'd be fine. I'd throw a 370 gear in the thing, and I would freaking let her rip with a 150 shot. And that would be my just playing around car. Black with gray stripes, and it would or carbon fiber stripes. Let's see. Let's see. We're saying I raced my 6.1 against a 5.7 when my 6.1 was still stock. Oh, he's talking about, yeah, 6.1 beat it. EG Performance saying Rift. I've seen Rush Shifts vids. Don't always believe what you see online. I haven't seen much of that. Typically, I don't get a chance to see much of anybody's stuff. Let's see. Oh, Rift saying I have all the video from when I built up my motor and my 6.1. Who thinks I should edit it and put it on YouTube? Oh yeah, hell yeah, do that. Absolutely. Lewis saying, any place to get more info on Ram versus SRT 6.4 engines? Any place to get more info? I would say, good question. Some of the Ram forums could probably help you out with that. But I can tell you, if you're looking for the difference between the Ram versus SRT 6.4 engines, the Ram is basically, the heads are very similar. The intakes are eerily similar, aside from the snout and design. 6.4 is basically a 5.7, the newer 5.7 with a stroker crank and a bigger bore. That's a big chunk of that, by the way. Stephen Price saying, according to RT, let's see. Oh, RT Life, it was very close. Yeah, they're all very close. Mahihimi, thank you very much again for that. I appreciate it, buddy. Let's see, Rift checking in again. Let's see. Oh, yeah, it's saying, yeah, the 392 has so much torque, it makes up for its weight pretty well. Yeah, it does. Say it makes up for its weight real well. Sean E., thank you very much for the contribution to the cause, man. I appreciate that. Let's see, saying Light LX refresh is past, major change in 2023. We'll see, man. I know they're hinting at it. We'll just have to see what they're going to end up slanging our way. It'd be really cool if we started getting some teasers. Really cool if we started getting something. Just something to keep us, engaged in all of this. But 3 years is still a little ways out. Let's see. Hang on, time out. Hang on. What's going on here? God, this thing's doing it again. Calistown I say, have you ever seen a bad accident at the drag strip, and what was the most common cause of a crash? I've seen quite a few accidents at the drag strip. It can happen from anything. It can be an older solid rear axle cars, C-clips, braking, having axles walk on cars. I've seen some bizarre stuff, man. I got to tell you. And a lot of times the main cause was, at least down here anyway, nothing. I'll put it like this. I haven't seen one where anybody got seriously hurt, but typically the issue was either the driver didn't get out of the throttle when things got weird. They target fixated or they panicked for that 1/2 second. That they just didn't react. They didn't lift quickly enough. But what's happened is the car will just pitch sideways. You'll see them catch it, but they've never been in that situation before. And so the car gets out of sorts and they tag the wall. I saw one car, it was a GTO, that for absolutely no reason wall hunted at the back half of the track. Now, I say for absolutely no reason. I don't know what the reason was. It could have been that it popped a coolant hose. If it was a turbo car, which I wasn't sure, I was kind of far back in the staging lanes of it, oiled itself down at the top portion of the track. But that's the type of stuff that I've seen. That's the worst is when that stuff happens, at the back half of the track. So, let's see, Gonzalo. Thank you very much for the contribution to the cause, by the way. I appreciate that, buddy. I really do. Thank you again. Let's see. Oh, Riff saying he was at the track when somebody died. That's the worst thing ever. God, that's terrible. That's Sonoma. Eesh. That sucks. Shawnee's saying, hi, B. Hi, everybody. Yo, what's up, Sean? Shawnee's saying to Riff, dollar for dollar, red eye is not much better than a Hellcat. Keep your car unless you have the money for a red eye, of course. Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, we're talking about a couple of tenths here. And at these speeds, a couple of tenths is a significant amount of room, but dude, it ain't that much different, I'm telling you. And like I say, I mean, the proof's in the pudding. And in decent weather, again, she's running 1020s. So, I mean, like clockwork. I'll give you an idea how these Hellcats can run with just a little sprinkling done to them. Poster's asking, how are the Walls drive shafts for the Hellcat? Better than DSS? No, not at all. So here's the thing. I had some bad luck with some Walls drive shafts, and customer service was fantastic. Mr. Walls took care of me. You know, it sucks, but yeah, I think he might be working on a new two-piece variant, though, of that drive shaft, I think. Probably wouldn't mess with a one-piece from him. I mean, ask Shawnee about the new drive shaft with the twin CV joints from DSS, but I think that's really that's where the smart money is going to be spent, not with the Wiles. And again, Shawnee, thank you for the contribution to the cause. I truly appreciate that, buddy. Shawnee saying, I think the light refresh never happened and they're going to keep the major changes and they're going to keep the same Challenger until major change in 2024. Sales are too good right now to change. I would agree with that. Rich saying, yeah, he's going to keep his Hellcat and just go to the lower pulley. Very nice. Kata's saying, Heavy Mason, question for you. At what wheel horsepower and torque would you consider the stock Hellcat axles in danger of breaking with 262 gears? Depends on how you're driving the car and if you're going to the drag strip. If you're on a prepared surface, what tire are you running? Because there's a few ways to take that. The real answer to that, though, is you start running anything more than... Let me think about this for a minute. You start running anything more than, say, a 285 upper with a stock lower pinned setup, I would say at that point you need to start looking at axles, because you're going to be capable of dropping down into like the high 130, low 140 range, and that's when I think you're going to start to sting the axles a little bit. I think if you're hovering in that 145 range, I think that's about the limit. So it depends really more on your 60 foot time. A lot of that might have to do with weight too. You can make that argument, but look, if you start running in the 145s, especially if you're running in the high 130s, that's when you're going to want to look into those axles for sure, especially when you're on a 262 running that quickly. Because at that 60 foot with that gear, you're about a 970 pass on that, give or take. So to answer the question, somewhere around 800 horsepower, 775 horsepower on a Mustang dyno. Shawnee's saying, I love my lower pulley. If the dang tracks were open, I might have been able to run in the 9s a couple of weeks ago and the air density was negative 1200. Oh, man, that's brutal. Yeah, we've had some beautiful days here. And I know we've had beautiful days here because my allergies been going straight up batshit crazy. Gonzalo saying, thank you, Gonzalo, man. I truly appreciate you, buddy. Let's see, HU37. What do you think of using the Julia platform for a CUDA and putting a turbocharged 6-cylinder? Which would you prefer, inline or V6? Well, the Julia with the V6 turbo already sitting at 500 horsepower is pretty sweet. V6 or inline six, I like the compactness. They're both very durable. Don't get me wrong. Inline sixes for packaging are actually, if you've got the right platform, are easier than a V6 for turbos and things like that for obvious reasons, right? But the V6 is more compact. You don't get as much crank twist with the V6. So there's that. Not that you get too much. I mean, there's 1,400 horsepower Barra inline sixes, 2JZs, and RB25s running around. I mean, trust me, there's plenty of really fast inline sixes. The new Supra, the Z34, or whatever it's called. Z4, what did I say? Z34? Weird. Z4. Yeah. I don't know. I'll tell you what, whichever one the aftermarket has the most out for. But realistically, if it's me, I want an inline six. I'm just partial to the inline. Plus, I like the packaging; makes life a little bit easier. So, I'm an inline six guy. I'd go that route. MD Performance, Mr. PD Foreman saying, "What relation do you have with Pike's Performance?" I used to work there. I also help out in some cases with camshaft design and some marketing as well as tuning and driving. If Alex needs somebody to take care of some polish up on a tune for a car at the drag strip, I can do that. And if a customer needs somebody to wheel their car for them at the drag strip, if they're not comfortable or don't have the experience with their car, and we need to get some either data for transmission tuning or what have you at the drag strip, I can do that too. I still do that. So that's just a thing that I do for the shop. But yeah, that's how I'm associated with it. I still do some work for them. It's fun. I enjoy it. Keeps me busy. Let's see. Well, I say keeps me busy. My job keeps me busy, but that keeps me engaged, I should say. Dollar Power saying, just jumped in at 69 watching the car of the year, 69 Roadrunner, graduated in 69. I like it. Still my favorite Roadrunner. Still the one that got away. Had an interesting chat, by the way, with a buddy of mine about some of the older cars. We were talking about what I consider picking up an old Mopar or something along those lines. And it's funny because, the more we talked about it, the more I was just going, God, I just don't want to do that. I'd rather stick with, trying to find the C10 of my dreams, which shouldn't be too hard to find. And just building something that would be a freaking riot, just something to play with. And that's one of the things that we were talking about was, can you even play with those cars anymore? I mean, yeah, they're great to look at or whatever, but they all turn into garage queens at some point, right? And that's just something I don't want. For my next build, aside from my wife's Camaro, which, it's really not a build, it's just more of a refresh, but for personal hot rod, so to speak, as opposed to my Hellcat, but for what I would build for myself, to be honest with you, it'd be an SBC Chevy with a freaking 700 R4, 3,200 RPM stall, AFR heads, RPM air gap intake, 750 Holley, and just freaking call it good. Instead of 410 gears or 373s out back, depending on the tire size that I'd go with. Wouldn't put it in the weeds, but stance it a little bit. Maybe hit it with a $150 shot. It would just be something for laughs, nothing more. Just to do snap donuts with, or snap J's with, or whatever. Just something that would be a freaking riot. Rolling burnouts or something like that. Maybe go old school, turbo SBC or something like that. That's really what I would build. So anyway, kind of got off on a tangent there, but yeah, been thinking about that a lot lately. Let's see. Lewis saying, got a 67,000 miles on a Scat. It's all right to daily get 17 miles mixed driving, but very nice. Crazy SRT saying, howdy, how you doing? Hey, what cam do you suggest for a 6.1? By the way, for whatever mentioned wanting FCA to build a CUDA, it's even worse than if GM made a Camaro Trans Am and just ain't right, man. Yeah, I know. So for your 6.1, there's not a specific cam that I would suggest, but it depends on what you're going to be doing with the car. Is it an automatic? Is it a manual? You're going to be putting it on the drag strip. You're going to be putting a bigger converter in it, things like that. But if I'm putting a cam together for a 6.1, it's going to look a lot like this. It's going to be somewhere around, and this is manual or automatic, somewhere around 220 on the intake side, 230 on the exhaust side. You'll hear me say that a lot because those are some durations at 50 that just work with these cars. The big difference is going to come in lobe separation angle. I would probably say that for the 6.1, you know what, I take that for the 6.1, I'd go like 222, 230, 222, 232. Intake center line somewhere around 108, just to have it come in a little bit on the early side. 108 or 109, you can still get away with 109. Lift is, it doesn't really matter. You know, anything above 560, you'll be good. So somewhere along those lines. So if you can find a cam that looks like that, that's non-VVT, that would be the cam that you're going to want to go with. As far as LSA goes, the most of them you're going to find for the Hemis are going to be somewhere around 114, 115 in some cases. You might find some 113, and that's fine. If you've got an aggressive load profile, you can go with a 113. The reason why you'll start to see more 114s than anything else is because they're trying to make the intake runner more active. The Hemis are kind of interesting with the way that they work. They're a tumble port head, so to really generate any real velocity, you've got to make the intake port more active, which means killing overlap. So you can get a cam that performs unimaginably well for a Hemi that just doesn't have a lot of sound to it. And that's the guy that's putting the cam together is just trying to run as much of an active intake runner as he can and still keep the LSA tight enough to help promote some scavenging for that mid and lower mid-range torque production. It'll still pull to the, you know, $6,000, so you'll be in good shape there. You don't have to really spread the LSA out too far to try to drag that power out. And by the way, people talk about intake center lines and lobe separation angles. What those mean, those are, if you're into cam speak, those numbers give you an idea for what that cam is going to act like. So just to kind of run you through, you know, we're talking about camshafts. You're asking about a cam, so let's talk camshafts for a minute. When we're talking about camshafts, intake center line will kind of determine, and these are very broad statements, by the way. So just know that we're talking in generalities here, but intake center line will dictate where the car is going to try to make peak power. It's going to be one of the things that helps to determine that. So a very advanced intake center line would be like 105. You know, that would be an advanced intake center line. Common intake center line is 109 for Hemis. Some VVT cams will show intake center line of 105, but you're going to back that thing off. You're going to kind of play with it and rotate that cam a little bit. But for the ones that are fixed, again, 107 would be kind of on the advanced side. 110 would be a little bit on the retard side. And again, more retarded means power further to the right, so to speak. So from your point of view, to the right on a dyno chart. Second is going to be lobe separation angle. Lobe separation angle is basically just how far apart those lobes are. The tighter the LSA, really the better, because you're mitigating pumping losses. But the problem is that your vacuum will suffer because your intake tract just isn't as active. So a less active intake tract means lower vacuum, which means your idle quality is going to suck, which means you have to kick your idle speed up, which can cause issues like too high a fuel consumption or overheating. So there's those problems to consider. But if you've got a tighter LSA, it's going to typically make more power through the rev range up until about, the last true quarter, maybe even into the last third of the power band of whatever car you're talking about, engine combination you're talking about, where those things will start to merge with the wider lobe separation angles. And the wider the LSA, the more it's going to try to drag power out the backside. And mainly because you're cracking the exhaust open earlier typically, and that's going to help evacuate the cylinder. Typically, you're going to close it earlier though. So anyway, enough about camshaft theory because it'll start to get a little bit tiring. But I will tell you this, those are the figures you want to look at. And I can do a show about camshaft. It's just starting to get off on a tangent here, and a lot of people are probably getting sick of hearing my voice already anyway. So James Hudge saying, hey, Mopar fam, good to see everyone tonight. Mason, what's your thought on an 8-speed swap into my 392 swap Magnum build? Stay safe, everybody. I think you'd be fighting a bit of an uphill battle, but you can probably make it work. You're going to have the harness out of a modern 8-speed car, so there's that. I don't know that an 8-speed swap is necessarily a better thing for you, though. Let me tell you what I mean by that. There is nothing wrong with a NAG 1. I would probably be more apt to put a torque converter in a, like say a 3200 RPM stall converter in a NAG 1, and maybe a set of 370 gears before I would put an 8-speed swap into it. Look, here's the thing. The 8-speed is great, but there's a lot of people that had a lot of success with that NAG 1. And I just don't know that the cost, it's one of those, is the juice worth the squeeze, man? I just don't really see that being the case in that car. Or in that, with that swap, at least. Antoine saying, I'm stuck with a 6-speed auto. What needs to be beefed up to hold more power? Are you talking about the truck, or are you talking about the 6-speed auto in the Mustang? But if that's the case, and if you need to worry, if you're worried about the 6-speed auto trans, I would say if it's the truck, I'm talking about the Mopar 6-speed automatic, which is really a 5-speed automatic. That one, I don't know if anybody is actually putting any work into those transmissions. So I don't know how to help you out there, but well, actually, you know what? No, Moe's Performance was doing some work with those transmissions back in the day. Might want to check that out. Give old Matt a shout. He might be able to put you where you need to be with that. Because all of my experience has been with the 8-speeds, man. I've been focused on the 8-speeds for the trucks. Let's see. Queasy saying, would you guys consider premium gas as 270, 280-ish? Not bad. Still on the fence, aiming for a 345 or 392. Oh, that's not bad. Yeah, premium gas in the 2s, man. I'll take it. Mr. Bo saying, agree. Let's see. My Hendy's saying, you're right about the new Dodge not being very mod friendly. I miss the old shade tree days. If you've ever seen Uncle Tony, true old school guy. I have seen Uncle Tony. He's got a cool channel. Mike Gee saying, do you think Dodge will stay with V8s past 2023? My bud thinks we're going to see turbo Pentastars. P.S. Stay safe. Same to you, brother. No, you're going to still see the V8s. You're not going to see Mopar going away from V8s. This is the core of their whole existence. I mean, you would have to have a complete market rebranding to completely do away with the V8s. I mean, that's Mopar in a nutshell. Now, I will say this, though. I was really surprised that, and I still am really surprised, that Ford didn't run with a EcoBoost variant V6, either 2.7 or 3.5, preferably 3.5, but they didn't go with that for the Mustang on any level. And I thought that was weird. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with a Coyote. There's nothing wrong with it. But, you know, Mustang Ford as a whole has always really kind of surrounded itself with, you know, 4-cylinder turbos or, you know, this whole EcoBoost initiative that they've got. I thought it was a fantastic thing. So anyway, just a little bit surprised about that, I guess. Let's see here. Alex is saying, hey, B, what does the Peugeot merger mean for, Challenger, if anything? I think I already covered that one. Alexander is saying, Mikey, nah, they scrapped that idea. If anything, the 5.7 might be replaced by a new turbo i6 called the Tornado. I did hear about that, but I heard about that for the truck specifically. And if they do that, if they drop an inline turbo 6-cylinder, please be somewhere around 3.5 liters. I would almost, dude, are you kidding me? You know, could you imagine if they did it the right way? I think block's got a bunch of webbing in it, forged crank. Oh, man. I'd be itching to get my hands on one of those. Let's see. Jay is saying, hey, Mason, so the 392 is not conductive to boost. Do you think a small shot of spray is okay? Actually, it's fine on boost. The problem that people have with the 392 is that there's actually a few things that really cause that. First thing is, well, let me just say this. We've had Pro-Charge cars making 550 horsepower to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno. They're still out running around today just tearing it up. In fact, the one that I'm thinking of is a red Charger. That guy beats the hell out of that car. And it still keeps coming back for more. The big difference, though, is that car has never seen a drag strip. He's only running around on stock tires. And so the transmission isn't getting its ass kicked. And I think that's really more to the point. It's not really the 392, it's the HP70. And if you think that the HP70 gets hurt by boost, you can only imagine what I've seen with the HP70 on nitrous. Because what happens is, if you're not running a progressive kit and or setup, controller, I should say, and you're not, and basically you're just hitting the thing wide open at, you know, let's say you're hitting it with a $150 shot at like 3,000 RPM, it's just too much load for the HP70, and it ends up overdriving the clutches. And I've seen it happen on the dyno, and it's not a good look. It's not a good thing. So if it's me, I would say I would love to see that car with a 100 shot. 150 shot might be a little bit much for the transmission. But just like with any other engine, when it comes to boost, you've got to understand that there's some things that are done from the factory with naturally aspirated engines that are just a little bit not conducive to boost. And in this case, I want to say the freaking ring gap on the compression ring on 392s is like, what, at 020 or something? I think it's at 20,000s. Anyway, it's kind of tight. So you start throwing it in their heavy cars too. So you throw the weight of the vehicle plus the boost, you can end up seeing already where that's going. So I'd be more worried about your transmission than the engine with the nitrous. Just go a couple of, at least one heat range down on your plugs though. Let's see. Zach saying, trying to figure out if I would benefit going a smidge larger on track tires for my Demon or not. Side note, what's the best tire for mediocre track prep? Okay, so let's go to the side note first. Best tire for mediocre track prep, hands down. This is the tire I've had the most success with, both in testing and with my own car. Mickey Thompson ET Street SS. ET Street R. The ET Street SS has been the best for a treaded tire, but the ET Street R for drag race purposes has been great for all kinds of track conditions. And the reason why I'm not talking about any bias ply is because I don't like bias ply tires on independent rear suspension cars. change in geometry at launch has a tendency to piss them off. They work great when both inner and outer sidewalls are being flexed at the same rate. When you add in that rotating geometry, you're flexing the inside or the outside differently than the inside, and it becomes it's not a complete disaster, but I just don't recommend it. Now, that being said, if you go a little bit larger for your track tire, you can go, I think, with 30 inch. Was it 315 45? I think it's a 315 45 17 is what the guys are running, because these are not these, those right back there are 305 45. So I think it was 315, a little bit more, about that much taller. Might help you a little bit. The only thing is, if you've got nothing really done to the car, I mean, look at Ray's car. I mean, it's pulling the front tires off the ground with NT05s, but you got to have radial prep to do it. So if it's me, man, look, get you a set of, 17 by 9.5, so it kind of looks goofy on a Demon. So really, get you a set of 17 by 10.5 or 17 by 11s for the rear. Go 305 45s on the back of it. You'll be just fine. That's what I would do. And that'll get you by on some really hokey track situations too. William Harmon saying, been seeing a lot of Hellcats returning to dealerships because of the layoffs, i.e. coronavirus. Now would be a good time to get a sweet deal. Possibly. Very possibly. PJ was saying, good morning, y'all. Good morning. Callus 99, is there a reason why Top Fuel dragsters use an aluminum block? It is a billet aluminum block, and it is for strength, and it is a solid block at that. James Hutch is saying, Mason, during the last chat, you mentioned the Joker cam for my 392 swap. What do you think about MMX Max Effort cam? I don't like anything from a max effort point of view, because what ends up happening with the max effort cams is that you're giving up too much power down low, at least in my opinion. What I've seen happen is guys will put too much cam into a car without having everything else that cam is going to affect be part of that build process. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, using a cam that has an idle quality which basically forces you to run a different torque converter. These are the things, and by the way, just because you have more cam doesn't mean you're making more power, at least not necessarily under all conditions. I'll give you an example. It's not uncommon for guys, when they're putting one of these cars together, they'll look at the very bottom of the website, so to speak. You've got your like for MMX, your no spring required cam, and then your stage whatever cam, and then you go down to this max effort cam, right? It's at the bottom of the page, so to speak. What ends up happening is you'll have a loss of power down low, and the car will feel sluggish. It'll just feel like it doesn't want to get out of its own way. The problem is you've got a heavy vehicle, and losing some torque down low is fine if you've got a lightweight vehicle that you can make up for that loss of torque in gearing. The problem is we've got these Mopars, and there is no way to account for the loss of torque with these cars because we don't have gearing options available. So what does that mean then? Well, what it means is that you need to take into account what you're going to be doing with this vehicle, and you need to take into account what you're going to be doing with this vehicle long term. Are we going to be taking this thing to the drag strip every day? Are we going to be roll racing with this thing? Are we going to want to do some just cruising around in this car? And you have to be honest with yourself and come up with more or less a true game plan for the vehicle. So for me, I like cams that are snappy all the time. I like cars that are fun to drive all the time. I don't necessarily go out looking for a maximum effort, because a lot of times the maximum effort means that I lose so much down low that the upper RPM stuff just doesn't really make up for it as far as a driving experience. And then there's this other side. Look, there aren't enough supporting modifications to the 392, in my opinion, to warrant throwing a ton of cam at any of these cars. And what I mean by a ton of cam is something like a 228 or a 230 degree duration on intake with, like, you know, on an NA car, you know, 236, you know, on the exhaust side or more. It is just simply not needed. And what ends up happening is you kill torque down low with a vehicle that desperately needs the torque to get moving. So yeah, would it work for something if you were throwing a gear at it, or if you had an intake manifold that would allow you to put a cam in the thing and then make it breathe on the big end? Then yeah, if that's the case, sure. But just understand that at that point, you're pretty much buying a race car. And unfortunately, or you're building a race car at that point. Let me rephrase that. And unfortunately, there's some stuff that race cars do on the street that's just a real pain. So again, that's going to bring us more or less back to the point of, let's make sure that we've got a direct plan for the vehicle, and then get the cam that suits that need. And just understand this: when it comes to camshafts, you are always compromising somewhere. You're going to compromise something down low for something up top, typically. But there's always that, how do you say it? If there's a rule, there's always a way to break it, right? There's always that exception, is what I'm trying to say. And in this case, a camshaft that helps to build power down low all the time is going to put you in a much happier place than if you're trying to actually put a cam together that's going to build just straight out outright power. So, you know, just know that a lot of times that compromise can come in real handy, and having that plan of attack will put you where you want to be. Again, let's say Queasy's saying, would you say even for regular street driving, it would be worth it to opt for the 6.4 over the 5.7? Probably will have to daily it for a year or two. I would say this. I would say that it would be worth it to daily the 6.4, only because the 6.4 is a lot of fun to drive. Now, that's only because right now we've got pretty cheap gas, and pretty cheap gas makes this advice pretty cheap to give. So yeah, if given my druthers, if, you know, for lack of a better way of putting it, I'd probably go with the 6.4. There's nothing wrong with the 5.7 though, and as a matter of fact, you wouldn't be bored with the 5.7. I'll put it to you like that. But if there's an option for a 6.4 out there, I would probably consider that 6.4. James saying, thanks for sorting me out, trying to build this Magnum out as mean street machine that'll see some occasional track duty. Now to convince my builder. Yeah, I know. Well, and that's the other thing too. I get it, man. Look, it's really tough when you're dealing with builders that aren't, I don't know, how do I put this? If you're dealing with a builder that has a lot of experience with LS platforms, you're going to find out pretty quickly that their default setting for camshaft recommendations is always going to err on the side of aggressive. That is because you're dealing with an LS engine. LS engines don't have the intake flow capacity that the Hemis do. I mean, the Hemi heads just flow a bunch of air. And even ported LS3 heads, which are considered to be some of the nastiest in the business, will get to about what a set of stock 6.4 or 6.2 heads will flow. It's just the way that it is. So when we're talking about, you know, which camshafts to pick and which builders to go with, it's funny because with the Hemis, you always err on the side of conservative. You don't necessarily want to throw the kitchen sink at it when it comes to cam, because you're going to kill all your power down low. And, oh yeah, I don't know if I've mentioned this, you don't have an intake manifold that will actually flow those types of, that will cover the air needs of that engine on the big end. I mean, they're good, don't get me wrong. But the reality is that it just doesn't flow that well up top. So that's just what I've noticed. And in fact, when I put when I put the 8-speed cars, when I put the 8-speed 6.4s with just a mild cam or a stock cam up against some of the built 426s, I've also noticed that the built 426s don't feel that far and away different to drive, which, you know, will happen if the cam isn't quite sized properly. I'll just put it to you like that. I've also driven 392s that were pretty much god awful to drive. So there's that too. Queese is saying, thanks fam. I don't know. Guess I just intimidated by the 6.4 power. Nah, you'll love it. I'm dealing with a little over 200 horsepower in my 6-cylinder now. I just get one out and take it for a drive. I think you'll like it. Drew Peacock is saying, what a load of nonsense. Well, thank you, Drew. Since you weren't specific with what is a load of nonsense, I'll just have to assume that you are absolutely on board with everything that we're talking about. Miami's saying, you're right on the 426 is just more torque, I think. You know what's funny? The 426s that I've driven have all been, you know, they're fun to drive. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they you know, you roll into the throttle, they, you know, light the tires up, but so do 392s. And, you know, they, with everything that you can do to a 426 to make power, the one area where the Mopars are just significantly lacking, again, is in that intake manifold choice. And what I mean by that is there is no intake manifold choice a la MSD intake or FAST intake. There's the Victor intake, which is decent in terms of dyno power, but you got to remember it's this big chunk of aluminum that just sits there and soaks up a bunch of heat. In fact, we've had to ice those things down just to get them to cool off to get, you know, consistent numbers. In other words, we just want the manifold to be the same temperature just for getting, you know, collecting data. That was a problem with that manifold, but you get the car rolling and, you know, we don't drive these cars on dynos. You get it rolling, they seem to do okay, but I've even heard reports from guys that are kind of into this stuff with the intake swap and really spent a lot of money to find out that the car wasn't any faster with that intake on it. So then we go into the Holley intake. You know, Holley's got one of their kind of a high ram looking intakes, but it's not a long runner, it's a short runner, and these engines still need some runner length. So the thing is that there's just not a really good intake manifold for these cars that are out there. And so since we have this huge void of intake manifold, which does a lot of work in terms of managing when this thing is going to make power along with the cam events, all I can say is best bet is to get a ported stock intake with a ported throttle body and let it eat. So far, that's been a pretty solid combination. Or go boost and leave it at that. Cam, you know, things like that. But then again, you start getting into the money aspect of it. Mopars are expensive to make go fast. So let's see. Let's see something here. Drew's asking, do I even drive, bro? Yeah, bro, I do, bro. Do you drive, bro? I want you to check out some of my other videos. You'll find out if I drive or not, hotshot. Miami's saying, mine falls flat on the big end still, doing a custom CNC high ram intake now. See, that's probably more along the lines of what a lot of guys are doing now with their standalone builds. In other words, their drag strip specific builds. They're having to go to Hogan intakes. They're having to go with, you know, obviously some pretty nasty cam grinds to get these things to run good. But, you know, the thing is that I don't really keep up too much with the NA crowd as much as I used to. But I can tell you that, you know, it's going to take a lot to get one of these things knocking on the doors of 9s. It's just going to be I don't know. It's going to be tough to. I just haven't seen it yet in a car that wasn't a drag pack specific car. So, I mean, it's not like it's impossible, but again, we got a lot of weight to overcome with these things. So it's going to be a little bit before anybody, I think, really starts to cross that threshold. And what I mean by that is it's going to be a little bit before a number of people are crossing that threshold. Let's see. James Hype is saying, forgot to mention 373 gear, tuned transmission module, and built nag 1. Now you're off to a good start. Queasy's got the smiles on there. James is saying expensive to modify a Mopar. Indeed it is. Queasy saying, yo, who the fuck is this? I don't know, just some dumbass. Nice try, Drew. You're cute, man. And on that note, guys, we are coming up on 2 hours and 30 minutes. I am going to check out here. Y'all stay safe out there, man. Keep wearing your mask, keep wearing your gloves, flatten out that curve. It will be worth it in the end. Y'all stay safe out there. Thank y'all so very much for hanging out with me tonight. And y'all have a great one on the backside. Queasy and James, y'all are funny, man. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Y'all stay safe. Bye.